Exercise 10, creating an Azure Logic app to monitor events from IoT Hub. So in this section, we've actually already pre-created a logic app by using our bicep template at the beginning of the lab. So we saved a bit of time. So what we're going to do is we'll go to the Azure portal and we'll search for logic dash, which is our recommended abbreviation for logic app resources. So back to the portal here, I'll search for logic dash. Here we go. We're now at our logic app. You can see at the top here, it's presenting us with the logic app designer since it's an empty logic app. And then we'll go back to our lab material. So now we will add a HTTP request trigger to the logic app. So we need to start a blank logic app. So if we scroll down here, we'll see blank logic app. We'll go ahead and click that. And you can see here, we're met with the logic app workflow designer. We'll search for HTTP request. And you can see here in the list of triggers, when a HTTP request is received, this is the one that we want. We go ahead and click this. You'll see that now we're greeted with our trigger, and we have a request body JSON schema, and we can also use a sample payload to generate the schema. So looking back at our instructions here, it says click use sample payload to generate schema, and copy this JSON to your clipboard. So I'll copy all this to my clipboard. We'll head back to the Azure portal. We'll click use sample payload to generate schema. We'll paste our JSON in, and we'll click done. It's giving me a prompt to remember to include the content type header instead of JSON. Yep, so we'll just say got it. And now we're back to our canvas where we can see that we have a JSON schema. So you can see it did in fact parse that for us and produce this schema. You'll notice a bunch of different things have been added here. If you look through, you can find body, and it shows window end and average temperature as we'd expect. But IoT Hub also wraps the message in an envelope which has other fields, such as IoT Hub message source, IoT Hub connection module ID, IoT Hub connection device ID. So now what we'll do is on our logic app, we'll go ahead and save our progress so far. And then you'll see here at the top of our HTTP post trigger, HTTP request trigger, that we do have a HTTP post URL. So the way this works is this produces a URL. You can give this URL to another application, and it can send HTTP requests to this application by using this URL. So I'm going to copy that to my clipboard. I'm going to put that in my scratchpad. So you'll see some of the things here that it does target prod 12 north central us.logic, so logic apps. There is an ID for my particular workflow, triggers, manual paths, invoke, and then you'll see some other information appended to the query string as well. Section 10.4. Let's add a step to our logic app for sending data to our log analytics workspace. So first we'll need to go back to our logic app and add a new step for send data. So here at our logic app, we'll click next step. We'll search for send data. One of the options that we have is Send Data as your Log Analytics Data Collector. We'll go ahead and click that. We need a connection name. If we refer back to our lab materials, we're instructed to use Log Analytics as our name. So let's paste that in. Now we need a workspace ID. Following the lab instructions, it says open another browser tab. Let's search for Log Dash in the Azure portal. So here, a new tab in Edge, portal.azure.com. Here I will search for log. I'll find my log analytics resource with my student prefix. And here's my log analytics workspace. So you'll notice on the upper right we have a workspace ID. So I'll copy that to my clipboard, head back to our logic app, and paste that in the workspace ID field. Next we need the workspace key, which is the primary secondary key of the log analytics workspace. So if we come back here to Agents Management, we're presented with two keys, primary and secondary key. We'll go ahead and take this primary key. So we'll click to copy to our clipboard, head back to our other tab, and hit Create after pasting in our parameter, our primary key. So moving on to the next steps. We'll need to paste in the following JSON. So here in the lab materials, step 12, we have our JSON which has window, end, and average temperature. We'll take that, paste it in our JSON request body. Here for custom log name, if we go back to our lab materials, we'll see that our custom log name is average temperature. So back to the portal, average temperature. Now what we'll need to do next, since we copy and paste it in, we'll need to make a quick change. So here on the window end field, we'll click the X. That'll remove that field. Then if we look in our dynamic content on the lower right, we'll also find our window end field. So leaving the cursor where it is in between the two quotes, we'll click window end. And you'll notice a change happens when you do that. So this is why we do this step. You'll notice that we now have a for each. You'll notice with the JSON schema that we generated based on the JSON blob that we pasted in earlier when we receive HTTP request, that it's actually an array of messages that's received. So what's happening here is when we want to act on a field that's within an array, Logic Apps is smart enough to insert a for each for us so we can loop on the body property of that JSON payload that was received. Now you can see if I expand send data here, I do in fact have my window end field, I have my average temperature field. I'm going to remove my average temperature field and insert that one back again. So if we look here through the list, I actually don't see my field here. So let's search for average temperature, and now you can see it here. So I'll insert that back, and now it's as we would expect. So next we can save our work. So let's go ahead and click save. And now our Logic app has been saved. Section 10.5, Configuring IoT Hub to send events to your Logic app. So for our next task, we'll open another browser tab. We'll navigate to the Azure portal. This time we'll search for IoT Dash, looking for our IoT hub, and you can see here is our lab resource IoT-our student prefix. We load this up. The next step is we need to click Events and then click Event Subscription. Events. Add Event Subscription. If we refer back to our lab materials, we need to fill in name logic app. I'm going to copy that to my clipboard. We leave this set to event grid schema. We filter to event types only device telemetry. So if we click here, we are going to uncheck everything except device telemetry. Endpoint type, webhook. And then we need a system topic name. So you can see here average dash temperature is what we need for our system topic name. So average temperature. We've set our webhook. And then we can click create. We need to select an endpoint. We had copied our HTTP request URL earlier to our notepad. We're going to copy that back to our clipboard. We're going to head back, paste in our subscriber endpoint, confirm selection, and then click create. And we can see that it did finish deploying our event subscription. Section 10.6, let's ensure that the Logic app is receiving the webhook and that our connection to Log Analytics is working. So if we just navigate back to our browser and let's go to our Logic app. Remember, we have 3 browser tabs now. Let's go to our Logic app, which is prefixed with Logic Dash. We just go to Overview, and you can see here you have refresh as well. Go and click refresh to make sure you have updated information. And you can see here in my example that the Logic app on Overview shows that in its run history has ran 3 times, and it was successful each time. So it does look like we are successfully sending data to Log Analytics. You can click on any of these runs and see the details. So you can see exactly which data was sent, the headers that were used. You can click up here and see the data that was received. So as we talked about earlier, some of the extra fields that are appended by IoT Hub, you can see the IoT Hub connection, device ID, the module ID. So you can see here ASA average temperature as we expected, since we have a route that sends data from the output from the Azure Stream Analytics job on the edge up to IoT Hub.